Thank you for watching this Last Mile Profits video.
How do you deal with shipping air? And why is it a big issue? Watch on to find out more.
Last Mile Profits is brought to you by Parcel Pending by Quadient.
Gary, about, I think 2 or 3 years ago, I posted a picture on LinkedIn of a parcel I'd got from Amazon. And it had something about this size in a box. Whoops, I don't know if you can see. It's big, this size. Didn't do that very well, but everyone gets the picture, I think. It's crazy, isn't it? And I have a feeling that although perhaps it's a little bit better than it was, I'm still getting parcels like that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of each video, you normally say if someone's got an opinion or a view or an experience on this, please can they comment below. I reckon every single person watching this video has got a story about receiving small item in massive box. It has happened to each and every one of us. If you calculated the cubic meterage of wastage and multiplied it by the 4 people that watch our videos or whatever it is, even just that limited audience is going to be truck after truck after truck of fresh air moving around the country, and it's mad.
And it's the fresh air that you're transporting, because quite often with trucks, it's not the weight per se, particularly with parcels, with small parcels, it's the volumetrics that mean
it's always the volumetric. No parcel wagon is ever overweight. It's always over full. That's always the issue. I think it's impossible to cram enough cardboard into the back of a lorry to absolutely overfill it. So I wouldn't think that would be
Central Eastern Europe's a bit special. People maybe load heavier things or maybe heavier than they declare. But I'd agree with you, volumetrics is the big issue. But it's not just, of course, the air that you're shipping, it's the packaging that you're wasting. And, how do we deal with it?
Well, I do keep an eye. This is an area where I've had an interest for a little while. So I do keep an eye on, once you've opened the box, what's the next thing that you pull out? And luckily, or happily, I'm seeing less and less polythene, less and less sort of bubble wrap or inflated polythene, or even worse than that, polystyrene, which is just nature's nightmare. It is getting more recyclable stuff inside, but recycling isn't a free pass. It uses millions and millions of litres of water and chemicals to get the paper back into a condition where it can be remanufactured into something else more useful. And a lot of the stuff we're getting now is probably 30%, sometimes up to 60% recycled already. But it's not a free pass. It's still using water. Probably worse than all the millennials eating avocados for every lunch, the recycled cardboard.
Well, I'll tell you something. I mean, I think we'd agree that the most wasteful is shipping air. But then if we do look at let's assume that we've been able to optimize that issue. You've still got the packaging issue. And I'm quite fascinated, what are the alternatives? So traditionally, you'd say that you have reusable packaging, but that's really complicated. It gets lost, and it's actually more probably energy inefficient to produce if it gets lost. But I've heard, I can't remember where it was, Gary, when I was at Leaders in Logistics, somebody was talking about actually a network in which they were only shipping the original manufacturer's boxes. Have you come across that before somewhere?
No, I mean, I've seen quite a few sort of closed loop supply chains where people have tried to use a reusable container. And like you say, it's plagued with problems because they disappear. One of the most famous ones in the UK is the grey plastic trays that letters are moved around mail centres in. I don't think there's a greenhouse in Britain that does not have plants bursting into their spring form right now that isn't in one of those grey containers. They must have made 10 times as many as are in actual use. So these things are a great idea, but extremely problematic to put into place. And as well, the other thing as well with packaging is when you are disposing of it, how many people actually take care of their personal information? Do you leave the packing note in the bottom of the box? Have you still got the label stuck on the outside with your name and your address and goodness knows only what other information that's attached to it as well? So even the personal disposal of it is not a simple thing.
So in a way, though, I'll put something out there that I think is going to be a bit controversial. What if, because the issue with packaging is that, and as you know, I worked for a big e-commerce player, customers or consignees who receive packaging that's slightly damaged quite often refuse to accept it and send it back. So perhaps the only way that it could be dealt with is either that, packaging from items being sold online is actually just brown boxes that, people can't complain about because they bought the item online anyway, or that we have to educate customers to accept or create rules that say packaging is not a reason to send an item back. Because then, theoretically, you could actually forget about the extra boxes. You could send items in their original packaging, especially in networks that are not running loose load but have cages anyway.
I mean, again, you've touched on another subject there in some ways. Well, what about this whole trend for labelless, boxless, packageless returns? What are the chances of that stuff making it through the supply chain back to reuse, resell, intact? If the packaging is that necessary on the outbound, these voluminous boxes stuffed with brown paper and God knows what else, how on earth do you expect it to work in reverse?
But you know, Gary, because you've got it. One of the big players in Poland, they come up in every video we make in Post, actually allow you to return, but also to ship without a label. But as far as I understand, what happens is you don't put the label on, but in order for it to go through the sorting networks, a small label with a barcode has to be put on.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's
No. Don't get me wrong. I genuinely don't believe there's such a thing as a labelless parcel.
Exactly.
All you're doing is determining who takes responsibility for doing the label. If it's not the consumer and it's not the driver and it's not back at the depot, as you know, at Quadient, the lockers we put out in the UK and elsewhere, I've got printers in, so we've taken responsibility for the labelling to make it a seamless journey. But there is no such thing as a labelless parcel.
Having said that, though, the Quadient label and the InPost label is likely to be quite small and produced in a more efficient way than someone on their home printer. And it avoids, I guess, something else that sometimes happens is the need to relabel again. So if you've got the carrier's own label, then you save some of that. So, but in the big picture, to be fair, Gary, I think we'd all agree that while labels, of course, it'd be better not to have them if we could avoid it. Maybe one day there'll be RFID or something more cost effective. But it's packaging that's the real killer, or packaging and shipping air.
Absolutely, and it's imagine the CO2 impact if you could just reduce the amount of wasted air being transported by 10%. 10%. That half-meter box becomes a 45-centimeter box or similar. A 10% volume reduction would be a worthy target. You'd have more positive CO2 impact than 500 copies of your green report.
Well, one last thought then. How can we deal with it? Because I think, it's primarily e-commerce that is responsible. And you can educate the staff. And a lot of them, I think, are. Because although I have seen it happen, I think it's less prevalent than it was before. But, should there be some kind of fine?
Investment. The technology exists. So there are organisations like Spark. I don't know if you've seen the Spark packaging machines. They measure the item.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive, though, from what I remember.
Again, it's investment. That was a Quadient business that we sold off a few years ago. They do great work and they have great technology, and they're not the only ones. There are lots of them out there that do a similar thing. If there was an incentive to reduce the packaging, so therefore they made that investment in the right kit and the right solution more attractive, then maybe that would be the answer.
Listen, I think it's a cool story. It'd be great if the viewers could share, if you still have examples of packaging that is really crazy, so a very small item in a big box, then please, post it below our LinkedIn post, because it will be quite interesting. But also, maybe someone's got an idea, because from, I think, our joint discussion, Gary, there's only two ways. One, of course, is education and maybe motivation through some kind of subsidy for people to buy efficient packaging machinery. The other one, which, it's the stick versus the carrot, is actually to penalise people that are regularly shipping air, because it is damaging the environment, it's wasteful. Great to hear everyone's comments. Gary, as usual, super talking. Looking forward to the next one.